Hello, developers. As a UI developer, I share the concepts and challenges I've encountered in real-world projects. For example, today we are continuing our exciting quiz series where we're building a fully functional interactive quiz application from scratch. This video is the next step where we will focus on the core quiz functionality. We'll cover key features like starting the quiz, navigating between questions, and tracking user progress. These steps are crucial because they shape the entire quiz experience, ensuring smooth interactions and clear navigation. So let's begin. Let's break down this part of the code step by step to understand its purpose and functionality. First, we have two event listeners, one for the start button and another for the restart button, starting with the start button event listener. When the user clicks the start button, this code runs. The console will log quiz start button clicked. This is useful for debugging, confirming that the button click is detected. Next, the start screen is hidden by setting its display to none. This ensures the quiz interface appears in place of the starting screen. After that, the function called showQuestion is triggered with the parameter value 0. This means the quiz will begin by displaying the first question. The showQuestion function is responsible for displaying the quiz content. We haven't written that function yet, but it will handle rendering the question, its options, and additional details like timers and navigation controls. We'll build this function in an upcoming step. Now, moving to the restart button event listener. When the user clicks the restart button, the console logs quiz restart button clicked. This time, the result screen is hidden by setting its display to none, ensuring the results disappear when restarting the quiz. Next, some key variables are reset. Current question index is set to 0, ensuring the quiz restarts from the very first question. The score is reset to 0 to clear any previous points. The question state's array is rebuilt using the new array method. This array tracks the state of each question, like whether it's answered, unanswered, or still pending. Setting all entries to null means we're clearing any previously recorded answers or progress. Finally, the showQuestion function is called again with the value 0 to restart the quiz from the first question. In simple terms, both event listeners ensure that the quiz can start and restart smoothly by controlling the screen visibility and resetting the necessary variables. In the next part, we'll focus on building the showQuestion function and understanding its role in displaying quiz content. Let's break down this important function step by step. The function called showQuestion plays a key role in displaying quiz questions and managing their state. It takes two parameters. The index parameter represents the position of the question in the quiz. For example, passing 0 will display the first question, passing 1 will show the second question, and so on. The isNavigatingBack parameter is a Boolean value, which means it can be either true or false. Its purpose is to indicate whether the user is moving backward in the quiz. By default, it's set to false. Now, let's look at the logic inside the function. The first line logs a message to the console, displaying the current question number along with the total number of questions. This is helpful for tracking progress during development. Next, there's an if condition that checks whether the index is outside the valid range. If the index is less than 0, it means the user is trying to go backward before the first question, which isn't allowed. If the index is greater than or equal to the total questions, it means the user is trying to go beyond the last question, which is also not allowed. In both cases, the function will return early, meaning it stops running further code to prevent errors. Next, the clear interval function is called to stop any active timers. This is crucial because each question may have a timer, and if it's not cleared properly, multiple timers can overlap and cause issues. Then comes the savQuestionState function, which stores the current state of the question before moving to the next one. This ensures that the user's progress is saved, including selected answers and remaining time. The current question index is then updated to match the index parameter, ensuring the quiz knows which question is currently being displayed. Next, the code retrieves the existing state of the current question from the question states array. This helps restore the user's progress if they previously attempted this question. Now comes the part where the question's HTML content is generated. The questionList.innerHTML is updated using a function called createQuestionHTML. This function takes three values: the question data itself, the index of the current question, the existing state, if there's any saved data for that question. This ensures the displayed content reflects either a new question or a previously answered one. Once the content is created, the adoption listeners function is called. This function ensures that clickable options are assigned the correct behavior. Next is an if condition that checks whether there's an existing state for the question. If an existing state is found, the console logs of the system is restoring the previous state. The function called restore a question state is triggered, which will recover the user's previous selections, timers, or progress for that question. Additionally, if the existing state shows the question was already answered, the lock question function is called to prevent the user from changing their answer. If no existing state is found, meaning it's a fresh question, another condition checks if the user is not navigating back. In this case, the system logs that it's starting a new question and begins a new timer using the start timer function. This ensures the countdown only resets for new questions, not when moving backward. Lastly, two functions are called to update the UI. The update progress function updates the progress bar to reflect the current position in the quiz. The toggle back button function controls whether the back button should be shown or hidden based on the current question. In simple terms, this function handles displaying questions, saving and restoring progress, starting timers, and ensuring the user can navigate the quiz smoothly. Each step is carefully designed to manage the quiz flow effectively. Let's move on to the next function, which is responsible for adding event listeners to different elements inside our quiz layout. And its primary job is to ensure that buttons and options respond correctly when clicked. Let's break down each part step by step. First, we start by selecting key elements from the current question structure. The collection item variable grabs the main container that holds the question's content. Inside this container, we use query selector all to select all the options available for the current question. Similarly, we select the next and back buttons to control navigation. Now, there's an important condition that follows. We check if the collection item does not have the answered class. This check ensures that listeners are only added to unanswered questions, preventing users from accidentally changing their answers once a question is marked as complete. In this condition, we use something called the optional chaining operator, which is the question mark symbol placed right after a collection item. This operator is extremely useful when selecting elements in JavaScript because it helps prevent errors if the selected element doesn't exist. Imagine a scenario where the collection item element is missing or hasn't loaded yet. Without the question mark, trying to access its class list on an undefined element would cause an error and break the entire quiz. But with the question mark symbol, JavaScript will safely stop and return undefined instead of crashing. This ensures the rest of the quiz continues to run smoothly, or if the condition is true, the function then loops through all the available options using the for each method. Inside this loop, each option receives a click event listener that triggers the handle answer click function. This function, which we will create later, will handle the logic for marking answers and updating the quiz state. Next, we add a click event listener to the next button. When the next button is clicked, the function first checks if the user is allowed to navigate forward using the validate navigation function. If the condition fails, the function stops running. Otherwise, it checks if the current question is the final one in the quiz. If that's true, it triggers the show result function to display the result screen. If it's not the last question, it moves to the next question by calling the show question function and increasing the current question index by 1. Lastly, the back button also receives a click event listener. When clicked, it triggers the show question function with the current question index decreased by 1%. The second argument, set to true, tells the quiz logic that the user is navigating backward, which we've designed to handle saved question states properly. By adding these listeners, our quiz now handles option selections, moves smoothly between questions, and properly ends by displaying the result screen when needed. The use of the optional chaining operator ensures our quiz runs safely, even if certain elements are missing or still loading, making our code more reliable and error-proof. Let's break down this first step of the createQuestion function. The function is designed to generate the HTML structure for each quiz question. Even though for now, it simply returns the text "Hello World." This initial step is important because it confirms that the function is being called and the content is being added to the page correctly. Now let's look at the code itself. The function starts by logging a message in the console, indicating that HTML is being generated for a specific question. This log message also shows the question number based on the index provided. This is helpful for tracking progress during development. Next, there's a constant called isLastQuestion. This checks if the current question is the last one by comparing the index with the total questions minus 1. Since array indexes start from 0, the last question will always be at position total questions minus 1. This condition will later help control the visibility of the next or finish button. Finally, the function returns the text "Hello World" as a placeholder. While this isn't the final HTML structure, adding simple text like this is a great way to confirm that the function is working properly before adding more complex content. In the next step, we will expand this function by adding the actual HTML structure for the quiz question. Now, in this step, I've replaced the placeholder text "Hello World" with a full block of static HTML that represents the structure of a quiz question. This static HTML was originally written inside the HTML file, but now it's moved directly into the JavaScript function inside the return statement. Doing this is crucial because it allows us to dynamically control the content and behavior of the quiz from JavaScript rather than relying on static HTML alone. By placing this structure inside the createAQuestion function, we gain flexibility. In the next step, we will make this HTML dynamic, meaning it will adapt based on the question data, the user's progress, and the quiz state. This process ensures the quiz can generate multiple questions dynamically without manually writing each one in HTML, making the entire application more scalable and efficient. In this step, we have converted the static HTML into dynamic content by adding JavaScript conditions, functions, and variables. Let me explain each part clearly. Starting with the outer div that holds the question content. This element dynamically adds two possible classes. The first class is answered, which appears if the saved state for the question shows that the user has already answered it. The second class is not answered, which appears if the saved state indicates that the question was skipped. These conditions ensure the correct state is applied when the question is loaded. Next is the question heading. The heading text is now inserted dynamically using the sanitize function. This function ensures the text is cleaned to prevent any malicious content or unexpected HTML injection. Moving to the progress bar, this part dynamically calculates how much time is remaining for the current question. If the saved state has a time value stored, it calculates the progress by dividing the remaining time by the total question time. If no save time value exists, it defaults to 100% progress, meaning the full progress bar is shown. The time value itself is displayed just below the progress circle. Now, let's talk about the options. Each option is generated dynamically using the map method. This method loops through all the options available for that particular question. Inside this loop, multiple conditions are checked. The first condition, isSelected, checks if the current option matches the answer the user previously selected. The second condition, isCorrect, identifies whether that particular option is the correct answer. Then, two more conditions control the visual appearance. The show incorrect condition is true if the user selected this option, marked the question as answered, and the option is wrong. The show correct condition is true if this option is the correct answer, and the user has completed the question. Based on these conditions, three possible CSS classes are added dynamically. The selected class highlights the chosen option, the correct class marks the right answer, and the incorrect class identifies the wrong one. Additionally, each option is given two important attributes. The first attribute, called DataCorrect, stores whether the option is correct or not. The second attribute, called DataIndex, stores the option's position in the list. These attributes make it easier to identify each option's status during the quiz. Next is the explanation section. This block appears only when the saved state shows that the user has marked the question as answered. If the question is unanswered, this section remains hidden. Lastly, we have the bottom navigation buttons. The back and next buttons are shown only when the saved state confirms that the user has already answered this question. The text for the next button changes to Finish Quiz if this is the last question in the quiz. The corresponding icon also updates to match the text. With this dynamic setup, the quiz now adapts to user actions, remembers their progress, and presents content in a flexible and interactive way. Finally, Let's talk about the last function for this video, called sanitize text. This function might seem small, but it plays a crucial role in protecting our quiz from potential security risks. Its purpose is to clean the text content before displaying it in the quiz interface. The function takes one parameter called text, which represents the string of text that needs to be sanitized. This text could be a question, an answer option, or even an explanation. Inside the function, we return the text with some specific replacements applied. The replace method is used twice here, each targeting different symbols, the less than sign and the greater than sign. Now, why are we replacing these symbols? In web development, the less than and greater than symbols are commonly used in HTML to define elements. If these symbols appear directly inside a quiz question or answer option, browsers might accidentally interpret them as actual HTML tags. This could lead to unwanted effects, such as parts of the question disappearing or, even worse, allowing harmful code injections. By replacing these symbols with their respective HTML safe codes, we ensure the text appears exactly as intended without any risk of it being treated as actual HTML. For example, if a quiz question asks, "What does div stand for in HTML?" Without this sanitization function, the div tag might be misinterpreted as an actual HTML element, causing the question text to break. This function acts as a protective layer, making sure our quiz content is displayed properly and securely. Even though it's a small piece of code, it's an important step in building a safe and professional quiz experience. To wrap things up, we've made significant progress in building our interactive quiz application. In this video, we focused on the core functionality that drives our quiz experience. We started by exploring the event listeners for the start and restart buttons, ensuring our quiz flow starts and resets correctly. Then, we broke down the logic behind displaying questions dynamically, understanding how conditions, variables, and function calls work together to manage quiz progression. We also learned how the ADD option listeners function tracks user interactions, manages navigation, and ensures everything behaves as intended. And finally, we discussed the sanitize text function, a simple yet crucial step that protects our quiz from unwanted security risks. With all these pieces in place, our quiz is now fully interactive, allowing users to start, navigate through questions, and even go back if needed. In the next video, we'll move forward with handling answers, adding logic for marking correct and incorrect options, and improving the quiz experience even further. If you're enjoying this series and learning something new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more web development tips and tricks. See you in the next video.